All About Holodomor by Amanda Norton. Today we will discuss what is Holodomor and why it's important, why did it happen and who caused it, where did it happen and who it affected, and finally, when did it happen and why. Holodomor is by definition death by hunger in Ukraine. It was an active genocide of the Ukrainian nation from 1932 to 1933. It was a man-made famine caused by the Ukrainian Soviet Union that affected millions inside and outside of Ukraine. Some causes were the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin was feeling threatened about Ukraine's strengthening cultural autonomy. Stalin took measures into his own hands and sought to destroy people from finding independence for Ukraine. Joseph Stalin signed the January 1933 secret decree named Preventing the Mass Exodus of Peasants Who Are Starving. This secret decree restricted travel from peasants after requests for bread, which began in Cuba and Ukraine. Soviet policies resulted in the starvation of millions of Ukrainians, and those who tried to escape were apprehended and sent back. It was basically a death sentence by leaving. How it affected the farmers. Ukrainian and Cuban farmers were forbidden to travel to cities in Russia and Belarus. People were affected in the Cuban, the North Caucasus, the Lower Volga, and Kazakhstan. During this time, there was immense suffering of Ukrainian farmers. Farmers would experience things like lawlessness, which is a state of disorder due to the disregard of the law. They also experienced theft from other farmers trying to steal their food so they can provide for them and their family. And then there was also lynching and cannibalism that went on, just trying to find some source of food because they had absolutely nothing. It was a life or death situation, and it brought out the worst in people. It happened in mostly Ukraine, but it affected areas around it, especially in Belarus and Kazakhstan and parts of Russia and all in between those countries. So Joseph Stalin, he was the known Soviet leader during this time, and he was the leader of Ukraine, and he caused this man-made famine because he feared the strengthening cultural autonomy of Ukraine. And a culture is autonomous when it is fully and authentically expressing the past, present, and the future aspirations of its participants. And he sought to destroy the Ukrainian peasantry and the Ukrainian intellectual and cultural elites to prevent them from seeking independence for Ukraine. Stalin created the 5-year plan, which required radical measures that forced farmers to give up their land and their livestock, and that inevitably led to the famine. In conclusion, Holodomor was an act of genocide put into place by Joseph Stalin. Similarly like the Holocaust, were both acts of genocide performed by an all too powerful political leader. In the end, Holodomor was ended because the collectivization was complete, with all farmland becoming a socialist property and all farmers working for the state. According to recent demographic studies, 13.3% of Ukraine's population died at the time of Holodomor. One of the most important parts of Joseph Stalin's plan was the timing. He had to time it just right. If it wasn't, the culture would be too powerful or it could be too weak, and the entirety of Ukraine would crumble as a whole, leaving no more ruling of Joseph Stalin and no more Ukrainian people. The fourth Saturday of November is now officially known as the Day of Memory for Victims of the Holodomors, which is an annual commemoration of the victims of Holodomor, which is the 1932 to 1933 man-made famine that killed millions of Ukrainians and all countries around it. Each year it lands on the fourth Saturday of November, and one of the most common symbols of this day is a girl holding wheat, which shows that many of the people who died in Holodomor were children. Lasting consequences of Holodomor is the direct population loss. by starvation in June 1933 at the height of the famine. There were at least 28,000 deaths per day in Ukraine, and 30% of those were children. Many of the documents in Ukraine were destroyed by Soviet authorities, and exact numbers are still being determined by historians and people who research Holodomor.